When I was 14, I learned what it felt like to be invisible. "Ethan, just step aside for a second," Caleb had said, waving his hand like I was a piece of furniture blocking the view. The family photo was supposed to capture a perfect moment, a perfectly staged smile, with his precious kids Bridget and Jason front and center. I stood there, shoved to the sidelines, my eyes burning as I swallowed back tears. I wasn't part of their picture. I was just there. Caleb was good at making me disappear without saying a word. A carefully placed sigh, a dismissive glance. It was enough to make me feel like I didn't belong. And honestly, after a while, I stopped trying. Bridget and Jason were everything Caleb and Rita could have ever wanted. Loud, confident, always shining. Bridget was the star athlete, and Jason, he had the face of a future model, always ready for Instagram. Meanwhile, I kept my head down, my sketchbook my only friend. At first, I thought if I tried harder, if I was better at blending into their picture-perfect world, maybe I'd earn a place. But no matter how many straight A's I brought home, how many chores I did without being asked, I was just a shadow in their sun-soaked life. The walls of the house were filled with framed photos of family vacations, school achievements, and happy moments. But my artwork, the sketches I had carefully framed and hung in the hallway, they vanished one by one, replaced by glossy shots of Bridget's dance recitals and Jason's soccer trophies. I asked once, "Where did my drawings go?" I had mumbled, my voice barely above a whisper. Caleb didn't even look up from his phone. "Oh, I moved them. They didn't fit the vibe." The vibe. That was all I was to him. An awkward misfit disrupting his curated life. Holidays were the worst. Bridget and Jason unwrapped shiny gadgets and designer clothes, while I got socks or some generic notebook with my name spelled wrong. "Ethan, you like drawing, don't you?" Caleb had said with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them how much it hurt to be treated like a background prop in their picture-perfect world, but I didn't. Instead, I nodded, holding the cheap notebook to my chest, feeling smaller and smaller. That was the moment I stopped asking for a place in their world, because I realized I didn't belong there, but I wasn't ready to disappear completely. Not yet. I just needed to find a place where I wasn't a mistake that didn't fit the vibe. And that's when I found Grandpa James. When the house got too loud, when Bridget's laughter echoed off the walls, and Jason's friends crowded the living room, I'd pack a bag and disappear. No one ever noticed. Grandpa James lived a few miles away, in a small house that smelled like wood shavings and old books. His place wasn't fancy creaky floors, mismatched furniture, and a front porch with wind chimes that sang softly in the breeze. But it felt safe. "Ethan, my boy," Grandpa would say every time I showed up, a warm smile lighting up his weathered face. His hands, calloused from years of carpentry, always felt steady and sure when he pulled me into a hug. I never had to explain why I was there. He just knew. "Rough day?" He'd ask gently, handing me a plate of cookies that smelled like cinnamon and comfort. I'd nod, sinking into the worn couch while he shuffled to his favorite chair. And just like that, the tension I carried from Caleb's house melted away. Grandpa never asked why I didn't spend more time at home. He didn't need to. Instead, he let me be. I'd sit at his cluttered kitchen table, sketching quietly while he worked on his wood carvings. The rhythmic scraping of his knife against the wood was oddly soothing. "You've got an eye, Ethan," he said one afternoon, watching me as I filled another page with intricate designs. I shrugged. "It's just something I like." He didn't press, but the next weekend, when I showed up at his door, he had a surprise. "There's a free digital design class at the library," he said, sliding a flyer across the table. "Thought you might like to check it out." My heart thudded in my chest. "Really? Really?" he said with a twinkle in his eye. "Don't let anyone shrink your world, Ethan. You're bigger than they want you to believe." That was the first time I felt seen. I signed up for the class, and that's where I fell in love with digital design. Logos, layouts, branding. I couldn't get enough. I spent weekends buried in tutorials, watching YouTube videos late into the night, learning everything I could. And Grandpa, he was right there beside me. Every weekend, I'd bring my new designs to his house, and he'd print them out, carefully sliding each one into plastic sleeves and tucking them into a leather binder. He called Ethan's book of brilliance. "I'm just messing around," I'd mumble, embarrassed by his praise. But Grandpa James never downplayed my work. "Messing around?" He'd chuckle. "This This is art, Ethan. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. At Caleb's house, I was invisible, but at Grandpa's, I wasn't just seen, I was celebrated. I didn't know it then, but those quiet afternoons at Grandpa's house were shaping my future. While Caleb curated his perfect family photos, I was sketching a life that was bigger, brighter, and far beyond the frame they had tried to crop me out of. And for the first time, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I didn't need to fit their picture, because I was already creating my own. By the time I was 16, I'd stopped hoping Caleb would notice me. I had learned to blend into the background so well that I was practically a ghost in my own home. Rita barely acknowledged my existence unless she needed something. And Caleb, he was too busy curating our perfect family for Instagram Bridget's soccer trophies, Jason's modeling gigs, and weekend getaways that I wasn't invited to. It's just easier with the four of us, Caleb had said once, after I asked why I couldn't join them on a beach trip. Easier. I didn't even argue anymore. So while they posed for sunset pictures on the sand, I packed a bag and headed to Grandpa James's house. Grandpa's place became my sanctuary. The more I threw myself into my digital designs, the more I felt alive. I wasn't just messing around anymore. I was building something. I signed you up for another class, Grandpa announced one Saturday morning, setting a new flyer down beside my sketchbook. Another one? I blinked, looking at the flyer. This time, it was an advanced graphic design workshop at the community center. Thought you were ready for the next step, he said, a proud twinkle in his eye. I hesitated. But what if I'm not? Grandpa James leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Ethan, let me tell you something. The world's going to try to make you think you're not ready for a lot of things. But if you wait for permission, you'll be waiting forever. His words hit me harder than I expected. Besides, he added with a wink, I already paid the fee, so you might as well show up. That class was a game changer. I learned how to create professional logos, design brand identities, and even build websites. I wasn't just sketching in a notebook anymore. I was creating digital art that told stories. And the best part? I was good at it. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had something that was mine, something no one could take away. By the time I was 17, I had a small portfolio designs for fake brands, mock-up websites, and concept logos I had dreamed up during late nights at Grandpa's kitchen table. Keep everything you make, Grandpa had told me once. Someday, you'll show the world what they missed. I didn't believe him then, but I kept every sketch, every design, and tucked them into that leather binder he called Ethan's Book of Brilliance. One afternoon after class, I stopped by the local cafe to grab a coffee. As I waited in line, I noticed a small flyer taped to the counter. Local design contest. Create a new logo for Joe's Coffee House. My heart pounded. Joe's was a small, family-owned cafe that had been around forever. They were rebranding, looking for a fresh look. The deadline was in a week. I bit my lip, staring at the flyer. Go for it, Grandpa said later that evening when I showed him. What have you got to lose? Everything, I thought. But I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I nodded. For the next 6 days, I barely slept. I sketched logo concepts between classes, refined designs at night, and tested color schemes on Grandpa's old desktop. I wanted this so bad, it hurt. By the time I hit submit, I was exhausted but proud. A week later, I got the call. Congratulations, Ethan, the cafe owner said over the phone, excitement clear in her voice. We loved your design. You won. I nearly dropped my phone. I did. Your concept was fresh, clean, and captured everything we're about. We'd love to work with you on the rebranding. I couldn't breathe. Thank you, I managed to whisper, my voice shaking. When I told Grandpa, he didn't say much, just pulled me into one of his bear hugs and muttered, "Knew you had it in you, kid." But that wasn't the only surprise. The new logo, it caught the attention of a local business blog. They did a feature on young local talent, showcasing my work. Suddenly, people were reaching out. Small businesses wanted me to design their logos. A local photographer needed a website. And before I knew it, I had a small side hustle. At 17, Caleb didn't notice. He was too busy making sure Bridget's latest cheerleading competition was front and center on his Facebook page. But I didn't care. For the first time, I wasn't trying to fit into their world. I was building my own. By senior year, I had a real portfolio and a reputation for being the go-to kid for design work. My teachers noticed. Even my guidance counselor suggested I apply to design schools. "Have you thought about art colleges?" she asked one afternoon, sliding a list of top programs across her desk. "Art school?" I mumbled, barely looking at the list. "Ethan," she said softly, leaning forward, "you've got talent. Don't waste it." My heart pounded as I glanced at the names on the list, prestigious schools I had only dreamed about. I don't know if I can afford it," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. That's when Grandpa stepped in. "You let me worry about that," he said one night after dinner, pulling a sealed envelope from his jacket pocket. "What's this?" I asked, eyeing the thick envelope. "Your grandfather set up a trust fund for education," he said softly. "I added to it over the years. It's in your name, Ethan." My throat tightened. "You're going to college," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "No one's going to shrink your world. Not anymore." That night, as I sat on Grandpa's porch, watching the stars blink through the branches of the old oak tree, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. For the first time, the world didn't feel so small. It felt wide open, and for once, I was ready to step into it. Leaving Caleb's house was easier than I thought. No dramatic goodbye, no teary farewell, just me, standing at the doorway with a worn-out suitcase and my leather binder tucked under one arm. Caleb barely glanced up from his phone as I walked past. "Don't be late," he muttered. Late for what? I wasn't sure he even knew where I was going, and I didn't care. Rita didn't say a word. She was too busy fussing over Jason's latest photo shoot or helping Bridget prepare for her next cheer competition. To them, I was just gone. But to me, I was finally free. College was like stepping into an entirely different universe. The campus buzzed with energy, creativity flowing in every corner. Art students painted murals on brick walls. Music echoed from open windows. People dressed however they wanted, bright colors, ripped jeans, dyed hair. For the first time, I wasn't the odd one out. I was just Ethan, and that felt incredible. My roommate Ryan was loud, chaotic, and had a laugh that echoed down the hall. He was everything I wasn't: extroverted, fearless, and unapologetically himself. But somehow, we clicked. "Dude, these designs..." He flipped through my portfolio one afternoon, eyes wide. "Why are you not making bank with this stuff?" I shrugged, feeling that familiar pang of doubt creep in. "It's just something I do." "Just something?" He nearly dropped the binder. "Ethan, you're sitting on gold, man." I laughed it off, but a part of me wondered if he was right. Then came Tessa. Tessa was a whirlwind of creativity. She was studying photography, always chasing sunsets and capturing moments most people overlooked. Her passion was infectious. We met in a digital media class where I kept my head down, hoping to go unnoticed. But Tessa, she noticed everything. "Hey, Ethan, right?" she said after class one day, her bright smile making it impossible to look away. Yeah, I mumbled, surprised she even knew my name. "I saw your project." She grinned, her eyes sparkling. "You've got serious talent. Ever thought about doing freelance work?" "Freelance?" I blinked, caught off guard. "Yeah," she said, pulling out her phone and showing me a boutique's Instagram page. "My friend's mom owns this place. She's looking for someone to redesign her logo. Interested?" My heart pounded. I don't know, I admitted, but something inside me whispered, "Why not?" "Come on," Tessa nudged playfully. "What's the worst that could happen?" That was how it started. One project turned into another, then another. Word spread quickly. Soon, I was juggling freelance gigs between classes, designing logos, creating brand identities, and even building websites for local businesses. I barely had time to breathe, but I loved it. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Tessa helped me build a website to showcase my work. Ryan spread the word around campus, hyping me up to anyone who would listen. "Ethan's your guy," he'd say, flashing that easy grin. "Dude's a genius with design," and people believed him. By sophomore year, I had built a solid reputation and a steady income. Grandpa James kept every article, every mention of my work. "Look at you, kid," he said proudly one evening during a video call. "I knew they couldn't keep you out of the frame forever." His words hit harder than I expected, because for so long that's exactly how I had felt, like I was standing outside the picture, trying not to be forgotten. But now, I was creating something no one could erase. Things escalated faster than I expected. During my junior year, I landed an internship at CNV, a top marketing firm known for launching some of the biggest names in fashion and lifestyle. I applied on a whim, thinking I didn't have a chance. But a week after the interview, I got the email. "Congratulations, Ethan. We'd love to have you on board." I stared at the screen, barely able to breathe. "Dude," Ryan nearly tackled me when I told him. "You're gonna kill it." Tessa hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. "I told you," she whispered, her voice full of pride. "The world's finally seeing what I've known all along." The internship was intense. Deadlines, clients with impossible expectations, endless revisions. But I thrived in that chaos. I climbed the ranks quickly from intern to junior designer, then to lead creative strategist within 2 years. By 23, I was running entire branding campaigns, making decisions that shaped the identities of major brands. And Caleb, he had no idea. I didn't tell him when I bought my first apartment. I didn't tell him when I took Grandpa James to Paris for his 70th birthday, fulfilling a lifelong dream of his. I didn't tell him when I paid off Grandpa's mortgage, or when I donated to the local library that had given me my start, because he didn't deserve to know. For years, he had made me feel like I was invisible. Now, I was everywhere. Then came the email. "Dear Ethan, we'd love to feature you on Channel 7's Young Visionaries segment. Your work in redefining brand identities has caught our attention." I read it 3 times before it sank in. They wanted me, the kid Caleb had pushed out of the family photo, to talk about my journey. The segment aired the following Monday. A cozy set, bright lights, smiling anchors asking about my career, my inspiration, my story. They even pulled up some of my early sketches. Grandpa had saved everything, just like he promised. "Ethan Park," the host said with a warm smile, "your story is inspiring. From a small town kid with a sketchbook to an industry leader. How does it feel?" I smiled softly, thinking of Grandpa, of all the late nights at his kitchen table, of the kid who used to sketch just to escape. "It feels like I finally stepped into the frame," I said quietly. The camera cut, and I exhaled, feeling a weight I didn't realize I was carrying finally lift. I didn't expect Caleb to see it, but he did, and everything changed. The man who had pushed me out of his picture-perfect life, now he wanted back in. But this time, I wasn't standing on the sidelines. I was the one holding the camera. I should have known it was only a matter of time before Caleb came crawling back. The segment on Channel 7 aired on a Monday. By Thursday, my inbox was flooded with emails, congratulatory messages from colleagues, potential clients asking for collaborations, and one email I never expected. Subject: "Proud of you." "Son," I froze, staring at the subject line as if it might disappear. Son? I hadn't been son to Caleb in over a decade. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity got the best of me. "Ethan, I saw your interview. You've really made something of yourself. I'm proud of you. We're having a brunch for my 50th next month at Belmont Gardens. It would mean a lot if you came. Let's put the past behind us." Caleb the first stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Put the past behind us? As if years of being ignored, excluded, and treated like I didn't exist could be wiped away with one brunch invitation. I closed the email without replying, but the messages didn't stop. "Ethan, it's been too long. Let's talk. Bridget could use some help with her new fashion line. Maybe you two could collaborate? Jason's thinking about starting a YouTube channel. You're great with branding. Any tips?" Every message was more transparent than the last. They didn't want me. They wanted what I could do for them. Caleb had always been good at curating the perfect family image, and now I was just another piece of the puzzle he was trying to fit back in. Too bad for him. I wasn't interested in playing along anymore. I ignored the messages, blocked his number. But Caleb was persistent. A week later, he showed up at Grandpa James's house. "Ethan." His voice was too loud, too cheerful as I stepped onto the porch, holding a cup of tea. My stomach clenched at the sight of him standing there in his crisp, button-down and polished shoes, looking every bit the picture-perfect man he always wanted to be. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice cool. "Come on," he said, flashing that fake smile I remembered all too well. "Is that any way to greet your old man?" "You're not my father," I said quietly, my grip tightening around the mug. Caleb's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. "I just want to talk," he said smoothly. "We've missed you, Ethan." "We?" "Right." I crossed my arms. "And what exactly did you miss?" "The part where I was invisible at every family event. or when I wasn't invited at all. Ethan, he sighed, as if I was being unreasonable. That's all in the past. I stared at him, feeling a calm I hadn't expected. Not for me, I said softly. That should have been the end of it. But Caleb? He didn't give up that easily. The brunch invitation came again, this time in a thick, embossed envelope with gold lettering. Belmont Gardens, 11 OOM sharp. Dress appropriately. No. How are you? No, I'm proud of you. Just an order disguised as an invitation. I wasn't going to go, but then I remembered something Grandpa James had said once. Years ago. Sometimes, Ethan, you don't confront the past because you want to fix it. You confront it to show it can't hurt you anymore. So, I went. Belmont Gardens was exactly what I expected, pristine, overpriced, and trying way too hard to be exclusive. I arrived 5 minutes early, dressed in a clean black suit, no flashy designer logos, just quiet elegance. The kind of look that didn't scream for attention but turned heads anyway. The hostess led me to a private garden room where the family was already gathered. Bridget was seated next to Caleb, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone. Jason was lounging at the other end, flashing his signature model smirk at anyone who made eye contact. And Caleb? He was at the head of the table, dripping in gold sequins, figuratively, of course, but the self-importance was practically radiating off him. When he saw me, his smile was too bright. Ethan, he stood, arms outstretched like I was some long-lost heir returning home. I didn't move. You actually came, he said, his smile faltering when I didn't reciprocate. Don't get used to it, I said, taking the seat farthest from him. The brunch unfolded like a low-budget soap opera. Bridget gave Caleb a personalized leather wallet, monogrammed, of course. Jason presented a designer watch with a price tag that probably matched my rent. Then it was my turn. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a neatly wrapped box. Happy birthday, I said softly, placing it in front of Caleb. His eyes narrowed slightly, suspicion flashing across his face. Ethan. His voice had that warning edge I remembered so well. Open it. I smiled, but there was no warmth behind it. Caleb hesitated, but finally untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside was a simple certificate, an all expenses paid luxury spa retreat in the Swiss Alps. 5 figures. Easy. Caleb blinked. What is this? A gift? I said, my voice calm. For everything you've done for me. His jaw tightened. Ethan, I don't. You don't deserve it. I cut him off, my tone sharper now. But I wanted you to see what you gave up. The room went silent. Bridget's eyes widened. Jason shifted uncomfortably. Even Rita looked away. Caleb's face turned a shade paler. You're being dramatic. Am I? I leaned back, my gaze steady, because I remember exactly how it felt to be told I didn't fit the vibe, to be pushed out of the picture, to be treated like I didn't exist. His mouth opened, but no words came out. And now I continued, my voice softer but no less cutting. I built a life that's bigger and brighter than anything you could have imagined. And I did it without you. I stood, smoothing down my suit. I've already given the retreat to someone who actually deserves it, I said with a small smile. Who? Caleb's voice was barely above a whisper. Grandpa James, I said softly. He's the one who believed in me when no one else did. Caleb's face crumpled. I didn't wait for a response. I turned, walking out of that garden room with my head held high. 2 weeks later, Caleb tried again. Ethan, please. We're still family. I didn't respond, because the truth was, I had already built a real family, one that didn't need staged photos or curated moments. And as I sat on Grandpa James's porch a few nights later, watching him laugh as he told me about his plans for the Alps, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Peace. Caleb might still be chasing perfection, but me? I was already living something so much better. A life where I didn't need to fit into anyone's frame, because I had created my own, and it was perfect just the way it was. Story 2. I never thought I'd be telling this story, but here we are. I've had plenty of ups and downs in life, but nothing prepared me for the roller coaster that came with my best friend's wedding. I'm talking betrayal, fraud, and a near financial disaster. But let me start from the beginning. Enter Olivia. We met in college and hit it off instantly. She was funny, outgoing, and always knew how to make even the most boring nights feel exciting. Over the years, we became inseparable. I was the one she called when she needed to vent after a bad date, and she was my rock when life threw curveballs my way. I thought we'd be ride or die forever. When Olivia got engaged to her fiancé, Alex, I was ecstatic. She asked me to be her maid of honor, and I said yes without a second thought. This was supposed to be her fairy tale moment, and I was determined to make sure everything was perfect, planning the dream wedding. Or so I thought. For the next several months, I was all in. I helped plan the bridal shower, designed the invitations, picked out the decor, and even coordinated the bachelorette trip. I spent way more money than I should have. But hey, this was Olivia's big moment. She was my best friend, of course. I'd go the extra mile. At first, everything seemed normal. Sure, Olivia was a little stressed, but who wouldn't be? Weddings are expensive, and she was juggling a lot. She'd vent about the cost and how her parents couldn't contribute as much as she expected. I figured she was just overwhelmed. But then, things started to feel off. Olivia began asking for small favors. Could I put the hotel reservations on my card just to hold the rooms? Of course. Could I cover the deposit for the caterer, just temporarily? Sure, no problem. She assured me I'd be reimbursed right after the wedding. I believed her after all. She was my best friend. Little by little, the requests piled up. The bachelorette weekend, on my card, the bridesmaid dresses, covered. Every time she promised, I'll Venmo you right after the wedding. The bill that broke me. 2 weeks before the wedding, Olivia invited me to lunch. I thought we'd be chatting about last-minute details, but she slid an envelope across the table. Inside was an invoice, $115,000. At first I laughed, thinking it was a joke. What's this? I asked, but Olivia's expression didn't change. It's what you owe, she said casually. I scanned the list. Venue deposit, catering, flowers, photographer, even part of her wedding dress. My heart stopped. This can't be right, I said, my voice shaking. Olivia leaned forward, her tone icy. Real friends invest in each other's happiness. I blinked, feeling like I'd just been slapped. Before I could process it, she grabbed my purse and hissed, I've done so much for you over the years. You can't do this one thing for me? Alex, who had been silent this whole time, leaned back in his chair and smirked. Just pay up, or we'll find someone who will. The fraud that changed everything. As I sat there, stunned, a memory flashed through my mind. Just the night before, I'd noticed a $4,800 charge on my credit card. I hadn't booked anything, but Olivia and Alex had just spent the weekend at a luxury resort, complete with spa treatments and room service. Slowly, I pulled out my phone and turned the screen toward them. Let's talk about this charge, I said, my voice colder than I felt. Olivia's face went pale. Alex's smirk vanished. You used my card without asking. That's fraud, Olivia. Her expression twisted, but before she could speak, I stood up, grabbing my purse. You want to call the cops? Or should I? Damage control mode. I didn't go home. I drove straight to the bank and froze my cards. Then I called the hotel. Hi, I need to verify a recent charge, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The woman on the line hesitated, but eventually confirmed that the reservation was under Olivia's name. And the check and signature? I asked. There was a pause. Yes, ma'am. It's signed by Olivia. But that wasn't the worst part. MAAM, the woman continued, her tone cautious. There's also an incident report. The room had extensive damage. Damage? I asked, my stomach sinking. The hotel charged your card for a broken chandelier and red wine stains on the carpet. We also noted a hole in the wall. I felt like I was going to be sick. Confrontation time. I drove straight to Olivia's apartment. When she opened the door, her fake smile disappeared the moment she saw my face. You broke a chandelier? I asked, holding up my phone with the pictures the hotel had sent me. Her eyes darted to the screen, and she shrugged, trying to play it off. It wasn't a big deal, just an accident. An accident that cost almost $5,000. On my card, Alex appeared behind her, crossing his arms, trying to look intimidating. You should be careful throwing around accusations, he said, but I wasn't buying it. Accusations? I stepped closer. I have receipts, signatures, and now photos. If I take this to the police, you're both looking at fraud and property damage. Alex took a step back. Olivia's face twitched, but I wasn't done. The cry for sympathy. Then Olivia did something I never expected. She started sobbing. Why are you doing this to me? She wailed, tears streaming down her face. You know I deserve this wedding. I've waited my whole life for this. I felt nothing. No sympathy. No guilt. Just pure, unfiltered anger. You don't deserve anything, I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper, especially not friends. and I walked away. But it wasn't over yet. The next morning, I woke up to a notification from my bank. Someone had tried to charge $3,000 to my credit card at a bridal boutique. I immediately called the bank and shut everything down. Cards canceled, fraud alerts placed. Then, out of curiosity, I called the boutique. "Hi, I need to check something. Someone tried to charge a dress to my card. Can you tell me who it was?" The woman on the other end went quiet. It was a bride named Olivia. She said you were her maid of honor and that you approved the charge. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. "She didn't get the dress, did she?" I asked. "No, the card was declined." I barely whispered the words. "Good. If she comes back, call the police." The final straw. And as if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "I can't believe you did this to me. You embarrassed me. You owe me this, and you know it." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't wedding stress. This was calculated. Olivia had never been my friend. She'd been waiting for the moment she could cash in on my loyalty. But she had no idea who she was messing with. I didn't sleep that night. After Olivia's text, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. I kept replaying everything that had happened, and each time I felt a deeper pit of anger in my stomach. How had I let this get so far? But I wasn't about to let her win. Not after everything she had done. The next morning, I had a plan. Step 1, call reinforcements. If there was one person who would want to know about all of this, it was Olivia's mom, Karen. Now, Karen wasn't the warmest woman, but she loved her daughter and had been stressing about how tight money was ever since. Olivia's dad had cut back at work. I knew Olivia had been keeping her in the dark about the wedding expenses, so I gave her a call. "Hey, Karen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hi, sweetheart," she chirped, completely unaware. "How's everything going with the wedding? Olivia said you've been a lifesaver." "Oh, if only she knew. Actually, I think we need to talk," I said carefully. "Can we meet in person?" There was a pause. "Is everything okay?" "Not really." Step 2, drop the bomb. We met for coffee that afternoon, and I laid everything out, every last detail. I showed her the charges on my credit card, the photos from the hotel, and even the attempted bridal boutique scam. Karen's face went from confusion to horror to full-on rage in record time. "She what?" She practically shrieked, causing a few heads to turn. "She's been using my credit card for months," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And now, she's trying to guilt me into paying for the wedding." Karen looked like she was about to pass out. "Oh, she is not getting away with this." Step 3, crash the rehearsal. The next day was the wedding rehearsal. Now, under normal circumstances, I would have skipped it entirely, but I had one more card to play, and I wasn't going alone. I walked into the venue with Karen right beside me. Olivia's smile dropped the moment she spotted us. "What is she doing here?" Olivia snapped, glaring at her mom. "We need to talk," Karen said, her voice tight. Around us, the bridal party was laughing, sipping champagne, blissfully unaware that a storm was about to hit. I kept my voice calm. "Go ahead, Olivia," I said softly. Tell your mom how you stole from me. Tell her how you tried to scam me for $115,000. The moment the truth hit, the room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Olivia's face turned beet red. "She's lying," she spat, her eyes darting between me and Karen. Karen, however, wasn't buying it. She held up my phone, scrolling through the evidence I had shown her. "Is this a lie, Olivia?" Olivia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Mom, I was going to pay her back," she mumbled, barely above a whisper. "Pay her back?" Karen's voice echoed through the hall. "For a $5,000 luxury resort? For a $3,000 dress you tried to charge to her card? For a chandelier? Olivia, what the hell were you thinking?" Enter Alex. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Alex decided it was his time to shine. "Babe, don't let them gang up on you," he said, stepping forward like some kind of hero. "It's not a big deal. We can figure this out." Karen turned her fury toward Alex. "You knew about this?" she hissed, her eyes narrowing. Alex opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "That's what I thought," she snapped, crossing her arms. "I hope you're ready to pay for this wedding yourselves because we're done. The wedding gets canceled. That was it." Karen turned to me, her expression softer now. "I'm so sorry, honey. I had no idea." "Don't worry about it," I said, my voice steady. "But I think I'm done here." I grabbed my purse and turned to leave, but I couldn't resist one last shot. "Good luck with the wedding, Olivia," I said over my shoulder. Oh wait, I glanced at Karen. I guess there won't be one. And just like that, it all fell apart. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen missed calls and frantic texts from Olivia. But I was done. I blocked her and moved on. By lunchtime, I got a message from a mutual friend who had been at the rehearsal. OMG, the text read, "Wedding's off. Alex broke up with her. Said he needed space." I actually laughed out loud. Karma comes full circle. Apparently, once the truth came out, Alex realized marrying Olivia wasn't worth the financial disaster that came with her. He called off the wedding, packed his stuff, and left her to deal with the mess. And it didn't end there. Karen and Olivia's dad, Mark, were furious. They pulled their financial support and told Olivia she was on her own. She ended up moving into a tiny apartment and had to get a second job to pay back some of the money she owed. Meanwhile, life was good. As for me, I walked away with my dignity and my bank account intact. I focused on myself, surrounded by friends who actually valued me. I took a much-needed vacation paid for with my own money. Thank you very much, and didn't look back. Every now and then, I'd hear whispers about Olivia trying to rebuild her life. I guess karma really did walk down the aisle that day. No more second chances. What did I learn? Some friendships aren't built to last. Sometimes they're just waiting for the moment to cash in on your loyalty. And when that moment comes, you need to be ready to walk away. Because real friends don't steal. And they sure as hell don't try to scam you for $115,000.